My 27F, GF, 26F, is upset that I would abort, wouldn't raise a severely disabled child. Dating for around 6 months. Friends for years beforehand. Both women. Important later. Both of us want kids eventually, so I wanted to have a conversation about parenting styles. Deal breakers. Things like that. I like to establish these things early on to look for incompatibilities. But the more detailed kid conversation seemed like it should wait until we were serious. During this conversation, I told my GF that I would not raise a severely disabled child. She asked me to specify. I said the type of child that would require enormous and unending care. Not something like autism or Down syndrome. A family friend of mine had a child like this. This woman sacrificed everything. She looks exhausted and miserable every time I see her. Her son will function at a toddler level for his entire life. I hold no ill will towards the mother or, obviously, the son. I feel bad for him. He doesn't seem to have a good quality of life at all. Maybe I am an AH. But I don't think I should have to accept this possibility because I want kids. GF asked if I would abort if I found out the baby would be severely disabled. I said yes. She asked what I would do if she was against this. I said I would still do it but support her in her grief as best as I could. She asked what would happen if she were the one pregnant. I told her if she didn't abort I would leave her but provide some financial support. Not only am I unwilling to accept the responsibility, but I would think less of her for bringing a child into the world just to suffer. Didn't say this part, but I do feel this way. She was upset that I'd leave her to raise the child alone. I told her she would be doing that to herself just as much as me because, as per this conversation, she is completely aware of how I would react. I told her this is the risk she's accepting if she chooses to have kids with me. She said she needs time to think about it. She's barely speaking to me. I think this is a hill I'm willing to die on. How do I approach this? I don't want to break up over a situation we are very unlikely to face. Die on the hill. You guys communicated about a possible scenario that could fundamentally alter your lives. Maybe try to explain the family-friend scenario more. Maybe see if you two can volunteer with severely disabled people. Maybe she will change her mind. Maybe you will change yours. But neither of you should do anything like that if you are not fully committed. How do I approach this? You approach this exactly as you already have. You both laid out your values and she's taking time to decide if she'll be with someone like this. As should you. Both of you have to take time to consider going forward or not now that this is on the table. Just like any value difference in a partnership. All you can do is think and wait for her decision. And your own. This is a hill you should both be willing to die on. You have fundamentally incompatible values about raising a severely disabled child. And that's not an agree to disagree. It probably won't happen situation. I mean, you have to discuss this further, and not because it's likely to happen, but because it's possible, and thus you should both be prepared and in the know about what the other would do, assuming you guys stay together. Think of it as like discussing parenting styles, which everyone should also discuss before there are kids involved. There are things that not every parent will ever have to face with their kids, but it's a good idea to know how each parent thinks about common scenarios. Like, I would imagine the chances of getting pregnant with 8 kids would be very low. But why not talk about the possibility anyway? This isn't like talking about what you'd do in case of a zombie apocalypse. This is ironing out your morals and life expectations. That's why you date. And if you disagree in ways that are impossible to resolve, well, then you must decide if it's enough to break up. I've worked in disability, and please die on this hill. There absolutely are disabilities so awful. That no one should have to live that way, and it truly does ruin the lives of the family. My heart has broken many times over watching the families of incredibly disabled people try their best to give their loved one a happy life. Everyone is miserable. Everyone. But no one will ever talk about it. This is a hill you die on. When I found out I was pregnant, my partner and I agreed that we would abort if the child was physically disabled. Down syndrome. I just know we couldn't handle it. The child is almost 2 now. And she's thriving. Is your girlfriend the anxious sort? The reason I ask is that I think it's possible that her reaction has nothing to do with the situation you discussed, and everything to do with the fact you might leave her. That might have been a trigger for her anxiety. That you would so easily choose to leave her if something in the relationship happened. That's my theory. If I wanted kids, I'd die on the same hill. I wouldn't want to put the child through that. And I'd be terrified to know what would happen to them after I passed. But you and your partner need to be on the same page about that before trying to get pregnant. It's also not fair to ask your partner to take that risk that they could end up having to decide between abortion and raising their child as a single parent. Smart to establish this early on. Nonetheless, you guys might have a severely disabled child without medical scans showing it, and also, kids can have accidents disabling them. Not nearly every disability is present or detectable in the womb, though. You say you won't raise a severely disabled child, but that is always a risk you take when you choose to become a parent. My late uncle had a lack of oxygen during birth. Severely disabled. No one's fault and could not have been predicted. Kids have accidents, or diseases, or undiscovered genetic conditions. They could fail to launch in other ways too. With addiction, depression, or other mental health problems, I completely understand this. Would you abort? Question is important, but I think you should also do some introspection on if you are actually ready to have children at all. It comes with many risks and sacrifices. And if you genuinely think you would just refuse to take care of a disabled child, you need to not have children at all. The two of you are not compatible. What if the severe disability happens at some point after birth? Birth trauma, accident. Are you leaving then and just providing financial support? Just curious, because not all disability is diagnosed in utero. I have always phrased it as, the women who can handle a severely disabled kid, including Down syndrome and severe autism, are heroes. I am not a hero. I can't do it and I don't want to. I respect those who do. But it's not me. And I look at it as for the sake of the child. When I die, then what? Do I have more kids and make it their burden? Do I dump the kid on family? Leave him, her to the state? It's not fair to whoever will need to take care of the kid after you're gone. Plus, you may not be able to handle a severely disabled kid well into old age. It's not practical. It's worth dying on that hill, and honestly, you're right. Bringing a severely disabled child into the world is just about the most cruel and selfish thing you can do. Hey op, I fully respect your stance on aborting if a severe disability is detected early enough for abortion to be a viable option. Downs usually falls into this category, but many other disabilities do not. Autism, including presentations with very high support needs, often doesn't become apparent until age 2-ish. And many autistic people who will end up requiring lifelong support aren't diagnosed until they're in school. Cerebral palsy also can't be diagnosed in pregnancy and can even be caused during birth itself. This doesn't even begin to get into all the accidents that can cause permanent disability at any point during childhood or adulthood. I think that before you commit to having children with anyone, You need to do a bit more soul searching about how you would respond if your future child is diagnosed with a disability or becomes disabled after birth. I personally believe that if you aren't willing to raise any child who isn't neurotypical and able-bodied, you are not ready to become a parent. This is a hill to die on. Unlikely but possible hard situations need to be consulted in relationship. I agree that bringing severely disabled child into the world is huge disservice to that child. Look, we all have things in our lives that we know we can and cannot handle. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I am going to use a personal, so maybe you can show your girlfriend my comment. A family member of mine got pregnant, and at 11 weeks the doctors told her and her husband that if they go forward, this child will have zero quality of life, will be blind, deaf and confined to an absolute miserable life. 4 different specialists told them the longest life has not been more than 10 years. He then told my family that having this child would be like having quads that never grew past the age at birth. The husband: "I don't care. You will not abort my baby boy." He went on to say, "I want my child, not you if you want to terminate." Long story short, she told him. His mind was the same. She will have the child and sign over her rights and divorce papers at the same time. He agreed. The child was 8 years old and he tried to pawn her off to anyone who will take her in, not come back for 23 mths. He complained about money, how he cannot get a full 8 hours sleep because she slid off her pillow 3 or 4 times a night and she will suffocate so alarm goes off, etc. He took her life in the most painful way to her over 14 days. He resented her so much and said he wanted her to feel the misery he did in the way he tortured her. It still makes me cry because during those 14 days we thought, hell yay, she's getting a voice. She's going to learn to talk. No, she was in so much agony, pain. 14 days, damn it. There is absolutely nothing wrong with what you want, and if your partner cannot understand that, you both are not compatible at all, do not do it. You're not a horrible person or some monster, you're a human being. If this is a hill you are willing to die on, then you do nothing. Let her figure out if she thinks you are worth this disparity in values. Both views are valid and you are being respectful by discussing it. Another point to take into consideration is, what would you do if your partner became severely disabled? What would you want for yourself if you became disabled? I have a similar mindset, and my boyfriend is actually more compassionate than I am. I could not handle or provide the level of care a child with severe disabilities would need. I tried working a caregiver job, and I couldn't manage it and had to leave. I also have a previous relationship with someone on the spectrum and it was too much for me. I understand the hill you would die on.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.